Good morning, everyone. We'll be beginning our presentation right away.
Welcome to the World Financial Symposium's Market Spotlight on Mobile Security. We have attendees joining us today from the U.S., Europe, India, and Greece. I'm with a Corum group based out of our Amsterdam, Netherlands office, and I'm happy to be hosting today's 30-minute Enterprise Mobility Spotlight. We have a very fast-paced agenda, and we're going to talk about mobility and security and weave in what's happening in M&A in this sector. I'm going to open with some observations and trends I've seen in mobile security. Next up will be Elon Gasper, Corum's Vice President and Director of Research, who's going to talk about some more important trends that he and his research analysts are following, specifically reviewing the M&A strategy, some major technology players, including IBM, and review some transactions and valuations in the sector. Then we have a panel of 3 existing and former CEOs from the segment that have recent M&A experience. These are Rohyt Belani of PhishMe, Dan Croft of Mission Critical Wireless, and Neil Hollister of Safenet. You'll enjoy hearing from them. Before going up, we'll open it up to questions from the audience, and we welcome your questions and ask that you use the Q&A window on the right side of your screen and submit them to the queue at any time. So let's head and get started. Employees than ever, including executives, are demanding to leverage their personal mobile devices in more and more ways. The term BYOD, or bring your own device, is popping up everywhere, and this is spreading mobile malware, including theft, hijacking of calling capability, and other fraud. The result is that IT and CISOs, or Chief Information Security Officers, are now having to support Apple iOS and Google Android if they accept this BYOD trend. I recently heard that 9% of employees are using their own technology in at least a limited way within their companies. Infecting mobile devices grew by over 300% in 2011 and is growing even faster this year. At the RSA show earlier this year, I heard more talk than ever around the issue of mobile application security in smartphones. The concern wasn't about the apps that enterprises might give to employees to, say, extend a legacy application, but the easily downloaded apps that are found all over the net from the big app stores. A percentage of these apps carry malware and not been approved by enterprises. Researchers have found that most of the developers of these apps are young and care more about functionality than reliability. And this can open the door for code functionality that can be abused by others. I'm expecting to see new vetting processes that allow enterprises and users to determine the trustworthiness of an application prior to downloading it. And work on this is being done at George Mason University in conjunction with the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So these malicious apps are pretty smart, and they quietly lie dormant and not initiating any illicit activities for a fairly extended period of time, and then all of a sudden one day, bam. The good news is that once an app store hears about this, they can put a stop to the spread by removing the malicious app. Now services that certify an app is malware-free are surfacing, and I think it sounds like a good way to get a handle on this problem. Now, malware, mobile devices are stolen or lost constantly. And to be honest, I actually lost my iPhone last week, but fortunately there's a lot of security on it, so I'm protected. But I don't know anybody that hasn't lost one yet. And even protection tools available to wipe out data on a lost or stolen device aren't a full solution. Half of smartphone users today don't use a password because of the hassle of having to enter it every few minutes of non-use. And this means that between the time a mobile device is lost and reported stolen and the data can eventually be wiped, access to corporate information might be compromised for hours. Another trend is that more enterprises are realizing that the lines between physical and logical security are blurring, especially in terms of risk management. Last year, ASIS International, which is an association of physical security professionals, and ISC, which is the International System Security Consortium, held their annual meetings together for the first time. And this is important because a recent poll conducted by these two groups showed that over half of 1,800 respondents said they do not have a definitive enterprise-wide view of risk. While this used to be difficult to achieve, Gartner recently reported that solutions now exist that make the integration of physical access control systems like badge readers and logical controls such as Active Directory provisions much more seamless. Gartner has termed this Physical Identity and Access Management, or PIAM. Silver lining in these mobile security trends is that they create huge opportunities for new companies to get started that solve many of these emerging problems. And if you get M&A in the mobile segment, you see a lot of companies that develop point solutions that the big players simply haven't thought of. These companies grow and often become core clients and turn into part of a larger company oftentimes. And what is created, and then more new companies are started. It's really a nice cycle. I wanted to introduce Elon Gasper, Corum's Director of Research. Elon's got a very strong background as both a CTO and a CEO. And he handed over to you to get your insights into this mobile revolution.
Thanks. The mobile revolution coming to the enterprise is not just another cycle after mainframes, minis, micros, and personal computers moved into corporate settings. There are substantive inherent differences. And dealing with the obvious, that mobile devices are smaller and more intricately networked through Wi-Fi and phone, but they come from there. So though in prior cycles, early adopters always stormed the corporate gates with their new machines, this revolution seems fated to, as you mentioned, John, BYOD, and have IT acquiesce or even embrace that philosophy. And with that, a new level of security challenges that come along for the ride too. All these matters are part of the texture of how the enterprise mobile revolution will impact business strategy and valuations as it forces what we see as further acceleration of M&A in the sector. Look at the fact that the changes have just begun is clear from the data. Even including just the projected impact on network traffic. And more than 10x increase coming in mobile data traffic in the next 4 years to over 10 exabytes per month. That's almost half the global internet traffic now, and really equivalent to what it would take to text in a month all the words ever spoken by our species. So beyond security and other implications, these incessant demands on network infrastructure will explode and impact the enterprise, and plenty of software business and tech M&A will reflect this need. Before we drill in to look at some key deals, I want to set the stage for valuation data points with a look back at last month's Tech M&A monthly webinar and its update on the general horizontal applications market. Plus, a look ahead at the research that we'll be presenting this Thursday. The 6 general software markets we cover in our quarterly report, from consumer to internet to vertical, and 26 subsectors will include this preview here. Look at the general horizontal applications market, where we continue to see valuations growing back towards the 3x revenues multiples they briefly commanded last year. Drilling down to survey M&A in the mobility space itself with that, we see several patterns driving transactions, including platforms, management, and security. We'll look at examples and deals for each of them. Enterprise mobility platforms first, as the mobile devices increasingly become a factor in enterprise computing. IT companies are starting to align their products and services to some extent around them. In a way, IBM is the prototypical such company aiming to meet the evolved mobile computing demands of enterprises with its new mobile foundation, they call it, portfolio. Mobile foundation. Blue now offers app development. They offer back-end integration, device management, security, testing, collaboration, all by means of recent IBM acquisitions that includes 2010 purchase, Cast Iron, that provided cloud sync and back-end integration for the mobile devices, and that was done at close to 7x revenues. Its acquisition of BigFix, too, back then, that year, with endpoint management and security technology, paid twice as much, but again, it hit around 7x revenues. And this brings addition of WorkLight's multi-platform app development tools for just $70 million, but an impressive multiple over 3 times those others, a sign of the maturing strategic market. MP has also been using acquisitions to build out a mobile platform. For example, at the time of its Sybase acquisition, mobile services have been estimated to represent about 1/3 of that target's revenue. And this year, SAP added and a deal estimated to be north of $100 million to help customers build and deploy mobile apps.
Well, Dell's acquisition of Waste Technology had mobile components too, and we could speculate about HP's whereabouts.
That's true, John, but let's move on to mobile management. Departments are coping with the mobile revolution, and in doing so, they've got to contend not only with the proliferation of physical devices, but also hundreds of different apps that individuals may choose to run on those devices.
Well, I've heard that BYOT for technology might be a better acronym than BYOD for device.
BYOD, hardware, soft, two core services seem to be unfolding around these needs. Mobile device management, DM, which covers use policy, inventory control, service management with telco vendors and the like, and mobile application management, which covers app delivery, security updating, and things of that nature. There are two companies that have been particularly aggressive in using M&A to build out DM and MAM solutions, technology and antenna software. Now, technology is long focused on helping organizations offer secure mobile flexibility to their employees. Through a string of acquisitions, expanded both MDM and MAM capabilities. If we go over antenna software, which, by the way, is backed by Intel's VC arm, they're more focused on helping companies build, deploy, and maximize their mobile apps. Its pertinent acquisitions include Dextera back in 2009, Voltus the next year in 2010, and Volantis just last year. Motorola are among the other major players that have made recent acquisitions in this space. Anyway, there's steady deal flow that indicates a lot of interest in the MDM and MAM tech space.
Well, let's go on to security concerns. That's a special concern of mine.
I know it is, John. So let's take a look at it. Systems of such complexity as enterprise mobile, as I mentioned, it's built up so quickly from multiple components. These things, anything like that in software and hardware, offer a lot of seams and rough edges that need protection from security threats. One more area where M&A is being forced upon the larger players. Solution providers have to stitch together whatever individual companies have already seen and executed on as a vision. This is a great situation for sellers to have a chance at driving valuations well above sector averages. Let's walk through some of these security transactions. Well, we'll start with a couple of older ones, and we'll go year by year. There's other candidates for anchor deal in this space. In retrospect, we judge the first benchmark was set when Finland's net security firm F-Secure bought the French firm Steek. Back at that time, it was often seen more as a storage play, but the salient feature now seems to us to be that Steek's SaaS technology was designed to allow users to upload data from either PCs or their mobile phones. Plus, it's already partnered with mobile telcos, including Virgin and SFR. That made for a good year for that Bordeaux, and almost 8 times multiple, including now. As a new decade rolled in, so the number of high-profile mobile security transactions, including remember McAfee rolling up 10Cube and Trend Micro donning Mobile Armor for about $30 million, but we have to list Juniper's S-Mobile purchase as the real value max. It's 35 times multiple. S-Mobile's almost prescient focus on smartphone and tablet security solutions put it in the right place to help Juniper meet the challenges confronting its Junos product line. This brings us to last year, with EMC capped a record quarter by monitoring and analytics firm Netwitness into RSA division by tracking all the packets, including wireless. They provide a broad foundation for mobile device security features that are still growing, such as the Android and other platform Rogue App detection and quashing service that launched this last summer. And that shows even a mature platform there may end up paying up for a relatively immature technical base for expansion in a hot area. Oh, Pioneer Symantec played some catch-up this year as it paid 12x for MDM platform Odyssey, as well as buying iOS, Rohyt HTML5, NIV protection specialist Nucona in the same month in what Ford called a major signal that the mobile management space is growing up.
For M&A, the beginning of growing up usually means the consolidation tempo is peaking.
Definitely has this year. Rather than try to cover all 2012, I'll skip over others like Sophos buying Dialog because I end up on an Apple deal. For just a fraction of a percent of its huge cash hoard, Apple picked up its venerable fingerprint scanning tech partner Authentic down in Florida in a deal that many insiders there had expected for some time. Plus, which may give Apple another edge in its wrestling match with Samsung, both in the market and in patents. These often buy for advantage in larger struggles as much as for the intrinsic value that you've focused on as an entrepreneur. There's plenty of cash still in corporate coffers to deal with the big changes this cycle is causing, which is good given the tremendous acceleration in M&A it demands. As a final indication of that pace in enterprise, mobile, and security, here's an update on a few new deals in that sector that were announced just last week. I mentioned in passing earlier, goods grab of App Central. Shows us all how in a tech segment changing so very quickly and acquires motivations can be almost social. In this case, Goods SDK strategy meant they had to, and still means they need to recruit and nurture a developer ecosystem. App Central's app wrapping security tech helps do that. Though it means corporate IT needs unsigned binaries, that shouldn't be a problem if their vertical apps corporate already had built, or they or Good itself can wheel them from the devs who right now are overwhelmed with other demands. Last week, Microsoft bought Phone Factor. That's a Kansas outfit that VC funded to the tune of about $6 million. It provides a phone callback authentication mechanism for hardware security without any dolly add-on chips, gadgets, or auth codes. That acquisition should allow Microsoft to enhance Azure and its toolkit offerings for enterprise or mobile developers. And running out the week, finally, small but growing Veracode, aggressively backed by VCs, Symantec, and Rohyt, reach across the continent to pick up Berkeley's mobile security in a clearly focused IoT enterprise security play. Veracode gets cloud-based assessment services that scan mobile apps and an API for the integration of them with other vendors' mobile enterprise app stores. Come on, we'll cover whatever happens yet this week. Back to you, John, and our panel.
Thanks, Elon. We're pleased to have an excellent panel today of founders and entrepreneurs of companies participating in the mobile sector. One of them have been involved in a recent M&A event with their company, and they're going to share just a couple of thoughts on the mobile sector, tell us about their companies and trends and issues they see as opportunities for emerging technology companies in the mobile sector. Our first speaker is Rohyt, CEO of PhishMe, and prior to PhishMe, Rohyt served as managing director of Media, a principal consultant at Stone, and a researcher at the Software Engineering Institute. He's also an adjunct professor at Carnegie Mellon University, a contributing author of a number of security publications, and you've probably also seen him interviewed on CNBC, CNN, and some other networks out there. So Rohyt, thanks for joining us, and give us some thoughts on mobile from your perspective.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the panel to start with. I guess, one of the positions I held most recently was as co-founder and CEO of Intrudis Group, which was a mobile security-focused services play, actually. So, having looked at what was presented from the M&A landscape as far as mobile security is concerned, I have a little different perspective to add to that as well, which is, it goes along in unison with what was being said, that it is definitely a very hot landscape out there. Intrudis Group was acquired a couple of months ago by a larger services player called NCC Group out of the UK, and the valuation multiple, and this is all public knowledge out there, was definitely the valuation was at a premium compared to most services companies out there. It was kind of in line with what you see sometimes even technology companies get, which was, kind of a 12.5 times trailing 12 on EBITDA and 3.5 times trailing 12 on revenue. So it was very pleasantly, it was a pleasant surprise for us to hear that sort of valuation for a purely services company. And I definitely agree with the mindset that, mobile security is kind of in its very nascent stage, but, we're going to see a lot of consolidation in this space as it matures. Some of the challenges we noticed the folks facing out there as BYODs exploding and so on, as was alluded to, is mobile malware. Mobile malware, a lot of people kind of have taken the approach of, it's just, applying the same antivirus methods that we applied in the late 90s to this. And unfortunately, that's what leads to kind of the downfall in being able to detect it and the bad guys succeeding, circumventing these controls. Because mobile operating systems, one, they change so often. There's a variety of the popular ones out there, be it Android or iOS. And, the advanced threat actors coming out of different countries are now starting to focus on this angle as well, because what we're finding is, hey, if we can break into these mobile devices, one step away from the keys to the kingdom, we break into people's personal email profiles and get access to corporate data, and then, provides them sort of a point to leapfrog off of to break into the corporate network. So increasingly, as mobile malware explodes, I think, there's going to be further corporate espionage and those sorts of cyber criminal activities emanating via the mobile front. And the other things that we saw, which was kind of a challenge a lot of organizations face, and I would say consumers face too, even if outside of the realm of the enterprise, is how do I know an application I'm downloading isn't going to be violating my privacy, given that, a phone is something that's always with you, has a built-in camera, speakerphone. There are lots of applications out there that have the potential to violate the end user's privacy by turning on camera, your location tracking, your speakerphone without, the end user knowing that. And it's quite a scary thought when you think about it. And unfortunately, that's one area that I found was really untapped. Most of the security vendors were focusing on malware component, but not really focused on, what are the privacy implications of these mobile applications you're downloading, and providing users a decision point through objective data to say, am I okay with this application being on my phone when it's, doing something maybe that wasn't completely intended? So as, from a purely technical perspective, I think, those are two very hot areas that I see going forward that mobile security is going to have to expand into, is, fighting mobile malware the right way, and then looking out for the end user's privacy.
Now, Rohyt, you make some excellent points there, because you don't know. I mean, you have your devices turned on, you've got your GPS turned on. I mean, it's tracking you, and you really don't know what it might be sending via malware that you've downloaded, and seeing a lot of that.
Absolutely right.
Now.
Yeah, and it's not just malware. What was interesting to me, I read a New York Times article, I think it was, or a Wall Street Journal article, one of those two publications about a year ago, that talked about very legitimate, reputed applications. And, they had the ability, because either there was oversight on the part of the developers to tap into some of this privacy data, not that they were using it for malicious purposes, but there was the potential to. So it's not just malware from developers who are intentionally introducing this, but it's also what's gotten unintentionally introduced in there. People don't know that. There's no easy way. No one reads the 15 different permissions that are presented to you when you're downloading an application, and more so understands them. Security experts. Most of the time, I'm just like, I need to download this. Yes.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. No, appreciate your comments, and we're gonna have some time for questions at the end. But let me move on. And introduce Dan Croft. He's next up, and Dan is founder and CEO of Mission Critical Wireless. And as a co-founder also, since the launch of the cellular industry, Dan's been a key player in wireless solutions, and he and I talked the other day. In fact, we knew some people in common back in Motorola from some time ago, so he's really been around and seen a lot. He founded Mission Critical Wireless with the goal of delivering exceptional mobility services for enterprise organizations. And I think his vision was to occupy the leading edge of enterprise mobility in applying these sophisticated technologies. And so, Dan, welcome. Give us some of your perspectives on what's happening in the mobile space.
John, appreciate the opportunity to participate in the panel. And I founded Mission Critical Wireless about 8 years ago. And you can imagine in the period of over the last 8 years, we've seen tremendous change. And that's typically a very, very positive thing. 8 years ago, we were dedicated and continue to be dedicated to servicing enterprise clients' mobility needs. 8 years ago, when an enterprise client wanted to venture into the wireless space, there was, of course, typically one answer, and it was a solution called BlackBerry. Today, I think if you ask a lot of IT managers, they kind of miss those days of the simplicity of and the fairly secure world of BlackBerry. But those are behind us, and there's no going back to that. So we're kind of existing and listening to the various people speak. We're clearly in a BYOB world, BYOD. We also have a bring your own application mentality that has set in as well. And a couple of things that I would introduce in addition to what I've heard commentary on is perspective when we work with clients in terms of mobility and mobility security. We are typically advising them that the real focus needs to be on the application space itself. Applications are what's really driving the potential for security issues. Not the people get very focused on devices, and we're going to continue to see these, ramping up of new devices hitting the market space. But the real focus has to be on being able to manage applications in an enterprise environment. How are you going to manage those applications? There are a variety of solutions out there. Somebody earlier mentioned, the application store. And what we're seeing today is sort of this confluence of what BYOD really encapsulates is this blurring between personal and business. Back 10 years ago, if someone had a BlackBerry, it was very, very common that they also carried a cell phone, a feature phone. And they used their BlackBerry for corporate work and their cell phone, their feature phone, for their personal use. And the two didn't mix. Now, today, in a BYOD world, that's everything is completely mixed up. So I have Excel spreadsheets that are highly sensitive on my smartphone. I also have pictures of my dog and my kids and my grandkids or whatever, personal information, as well as my songs that I like to listen to. And this is causing all kinds of issues from both a technical perspective. I might also add a sociological perspective in terms of who owns what and who has the rights to various initiatives. We've all heard of problems when somebody loses their device. It's pretty much child's play today to wipe that device, but am I going to be able to do a selective wipe, and how am I going to define what solutions I want to wipe, particularly if the individual ability to take corporate data and send it or store it in what are considered to be the more personal containers within a device. See, the opportunity, and I always stress to our clients that the first area of defense is when it's security, the first thing to be concerned with is the mobility of devices. And so we get into this area that we're talking about, being able to look and wipe a device, and also somebody mentioned the password protection. You'd be shocked at how many companies we work with that ask us to implement the most highly secure encryption algorithms because of fear of wireless transmissions being intercepted. And as we get to work on them and get underneath the covers of our clients, we find that, but they have no password policy on those devices. So highly encrypted as it's being transmitted, but the individual, if he loses the device, anybody could pick it up and start using it.
So you're absolutely right, and that's something that you see out there today. The time between the device being lost and being wiped clean, a lot of stuff can happen, and that's all part of just the whole environment of protecting this information.
And one other aspect that I would mention, we typically see clients will come to us and say, Dan, we need device management. Can you help us with device management? And of course, the quick answer, well, of course we can help you with device management. What is prompting the call? And what you quick find out is it's not at all about device management. Device management is, from Mission Critical Wireless perspective, is one of four major quadrants in the device security or mobility security marketplace. The MDM is the component that will manage that device, and as we were talking about, lock it down or wipe it or kill it necessary, or at least be able to enforce policies on that on the devices. We mentioned the mobile application store, and drill down on that. And when it's to malware, are we listing or blacklisting apps? And we advise our clients typically, for example, to create a mobile application store and include on that store consumer apps that are acceptable. So, conceptually, there's no reason Angry Birds can't be in a corporate store. So the version of Angry Birds is clean and is acceptable, and don't have the heartburn if my employees are playing Angry Birds on their BYOD device. Third area.
No.
The third is mobile application management. And what we find is very few companies think ahead of time how are they going to deploy and provision applications. We have clients that come to us that have just purchased 5,000 tablets, have already shipped out to their users, and then they come to us saying, how are we going to get, we have a corporate, how do we get it on those devices? And, we didn't think of that before somebody issued a PO for 5,000 tablets. So how you manage applications, it's not the creation and initial deployment. Keep in mind that only are there OS upgrades that are occurring on just about a weekly basis. You have version upgrades of your own custom apps, and having version control of your own corporate apps is going to grow into a much more significant issue than is today, because we're typically with first-generation mobile apps today, but that's certainly not going to stay that way. The last component is I haven't heard discussion around the mobile application platforms and the meat platforms, but important for companies to really take a close look at how they're going to develop their apps, recognizing that you're going to have iOS devices, you're going to have Android devices, you're probably going to have Windows Phone, 8 and going forward devices. You may have B10 devices going forward. How are your apps going to be seamless across divergent OSs? So the issues that we work with today and advise our clients on that they need to be looking at to have a cohesive mobility security strategy.
Dan, I appreciate your comments. They're very interesting. And one of the things Dan pointed out, and Rohyt also pointed out, is the fact that the services business in this side, providing services to these Fortune and large companies that are implementing these services, the valuations have been pretty significant, much closer to software valuations. Again, Dan, thanks. I know we're running a little bit over, but I think the information's interesting. I want to introduce Neil Hollister, our panelist. I know you've got a few comments, but Neil was chairman and CEO of CryptoCard until it sailed to Safenet last February, where he's now VP of the Authentication-as-a-Service business. Gartner Group recognized CryptoCard as an industry visionary in 2011, and right there on the Magic Quadrant, which is always interesting. And so, Neil, thanks for joining us. You're calling in from the UK, but give us a few thoughts on mobile from your perspective.
Thank you, John, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on the panel. John, I'm coming from this from a slightly different perspective from the other panelists, in that I guess the growth of CryptoCard was due to the impact of BYOD. So than being a participant in the BYOD revolution, or as I said earlier, the BYA, or the BYE, or the BYT, or as I call it, just the BYOX, What that massive change has done is it's blown up an enterprise's typical security posture. And in particular, it's blown a hole a mile wide in their perimeter-based security. And where that takes you is that you're less sure you used to be who's accessing your enterprise resources. And so what BYOD has done essentially is create a massive authentication problem, or put simply, how do network administrators know who's really in their network anymore when they're absolutely sure about the application, they're not sure about the device, they're not even sure about the technology. When we got involved in Cryptocard 5 or 6 years ago and acquired the company, we kind of figured that this was coming. And the problem for many enterprise security managers is that there's an approach to authentication, if you like the RSA approach, as there's by far the market leader in the first generation of authentication, authentication was just too hard and too expensive to scale to very large numbers of people. So, you could get through your key management, you could get through your road warriors, but when it came to going beyond that, it was actually very difficult. And so the vision we had at Cryptocard was, given the enterprise mobility trend that was coming, impact that you've owned up the perimeter-based security strategy of every enterprise, you've then got an authentication problem. For that to be solved, you've got to be able to authenticate your users in a much simpler, much easier, and much more cost-effective manner. We address that by bringing together, I guess kind of ironically, taking advantage of the BYOD trend and taking advantage of the software-as-a-service trend. So what we put together was an Authentication-as-a-Service offering, which focused around taking away the pain and the expense and the resource that was traditionally associated with authentication systems. So we took away every enterprise's authentication infrastructure, giving them a shared infrastructure in the cloud. We took away the traditional hardware or even soft token approach and replaced it with the use of devices, whether that's with applications, whether it's with SMS, whether it's by other technologies, SIM apps or whatever, kind of doesn't matter. We use a mobile device together with SaaS trend to make authentication very cheap and easy. So, I think the other aspect, perhaps for some of the listeners to this, is there's the opportunity within the providing security technology within the BYOD. The way the kind of interesting question is, what does BYOD do to an enterprise's security posture, and what does that mean for different types of vendor? What we saw with Cryptocard was, I think, typical of what you'll see elsewhere, and authentication is just one of many security segments affected in a similar way, was the people that address that become interesting to the major players in that wider security segment. So we had interest from, most of the large players in the authentication segment. Safenet was in the same Magic Quadrant, and Gartner were nice to us. They placed Safenet as the market leader. So they had a simple choice. They had to be in the space that we were in. Did they buy, did they build? And I think other large players in the same position, and to some extent the Microsoft phone factor, although from a different industry, it's in exactly the same trend that drove that acquisition. And I think that will also drive a lot of activity and a lot of acquisition activity and a lot of consolidation in this segment. Helpful?
Yeah. Neil, that absolutely is helpful. Well, as everybody can tell, we've kind of gone over today. I'm amazed at the content that we were able to pull together here from Elon Gasper's group and also from our panelists themselves. It shows that there's some huge trends going on in mobile today, and also identified some really interesting emerging areas that could create significant opportunities for new companies. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to call the questions off. We just aren't going to have time because we've had most people stick with us for the entire conference today. I think what this points out, Elon, is that we need to have a little bit more time when we cover a topic as interesting as this. In fact, if you go, Tim, if you go ahead and advance to the last slide, and where my email address is on there. What I would suggest is if you have questions or you have questions for the panelists, please email them to me at jons@corumgroup.com. I'll get them circulated to the panelists. We appreciate everybody joining us today, and sorry that we ran over, but I think it was a great topic. And again, I want to thank the panelists Rohyt and Dan and Neil for your time. You've added a lot of value to the conference, and keep an eye out for World Financial Symposium's other conferences, both live and spotlights like this, and we hope you join us again. Thanks again. Good day.